Mic's on. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Genoa Township Board of Trustees meeting. Today is a regular trustee meeting. The date is May 4th, 2023, and the time is 6:30 p.m. Roll call.
Mr. Antoinette?
Here.
Ms. Goodman?
Here.
Ms. Vaughn?
Here. Also present are fiscal officer Pat Myers, our police chief Steve Gamble, our acting deputy police chief Jim McMillan, our fire chief Joe Ponzi, the director of zoning and development Joe Schaefer, our township administrator Paul Wise, and our director of roads and buildings and grounds Bob Matthews. This time I'd like to ask everyone to stand and I'd ask Jim Carter to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. Start out with police tonight.
Good evening. I request a resolution to hire Mr. Nathaniel Wilson as a full-time police officer effective May 8th, 2023. Mr. Wilson has successfully completed all portions of our hiring process to include polygraph, background, psychological, and medical exams. Mr. Wilson is a recent graduate from the Delaware County Career Center Law Enforcement Academy. He has an associate degree in criminal justice from Columbus State. He graduated from Genoa Christian Academy and currently lives in the township with his family. I recommend his starting wage be $32.35 an hour, which is the A-step rate.
This is $32.85. Is it $32.85 or $32.35?
I'll check the contract, whatever's in there.
Okay. I'll move to hire Nathaniel Wilson as a full-time police officer effective May 8th, 2023 at the A-step rate of $32.85 per hour per the collective bargaining agreement. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Great. Nate, if you want to step up for the oath of office, please.
I, Nathaniel Wilson, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States, that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution and laws of the State of Ohio, the Constitution and laws of the State of Ohio, and will faithfully discharge the duties and will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer in Genoa Township, Delaware County, State of Ohio, State of Ohio, during the continuance of my employment, during the continuance of my employment, so help me God. so help me God.
Nate, normally I would ask you to introduce the people here with you, but it's only a 3-hour meeting. It's great to see so much support for you from your family and friends. Who would you like to pin your badge on?
My mother.
Okay. Come on. You want to introduce your parents?
I do. This is my father, Frank, and then my mother, Sandy. And I have lots of friends and family. I won't go down the line, but everybody here. So.
Great. Well, just remember, since your parents live in the township, they pay your salary, so you have to listen to them. Thank you very much. I think there's going to be some refreshments back at the police station, a little tour of the police station for family and friends. Yes. Excited to have you.
Is that Bryce?
Monday morning, yes, sir.
All right. We're going to move on, and I'm going to turn it over to our fiscal officer, Pat Meyer.
Thank you. First, I'd like to ask for approval of the meeting minutes. We got the March 21st special trustee zoning meeting, and the April 6th regular trustee meeting as presented to you.
I'll move to approve the following trustee meeting minutes: March 21st, 2023 special trustee zoning meeting, and April 6th, 2023 regular trustee meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Yeah, and the only other thing I have is I have the financials for you. I'll have them for your review. Just for clarity, total funds, $29,266,996.47. That's broken out into our investments of $21,591,895.56, and our primary account of $7,675,100.91. Everything is cleared and ready for that. I'll have that for your review. The only other thing I mentioned to you last meeting, the auditors were here. The auditors are no longer here. They're gone. So they did all their field work. Everything's done. They're putting the audit together. If I tell you it'll be 2 weeks, it'll be 2 months. You know, I mean, when we get it back, though, we'll make it available on the website for everybody to review, and we'll have it. Initial thoughts from the auditors were everything, other than a few human error type things that we corrected with them while they were here. I think we're fine.
Perfect. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
All right, I'll move on to public comment. Anybody wants to speak?
Jim Carter, 4493 South Old 3C Highway. I marked my calendar quite a while back that the nest at Hoover is going to, the 3 years will expire for the final development plan. And my concern is, and you've received a letter from me electronically, and Mr. Schaefer got a chance to pass those out? Okay, great. And basically, 3 years ago, one of the conditions of the final development plan was that Mr. Shively would sell the pond and a portion of the property over there. Since then, he's given me 2 different surveys that are a lot less than is depicted in the final development plan. And then he's told me that if I don't sign it, he will, in fact, not sell it to me, even if he does the development. And I just don't feel that's in compliance with the plan. And so before you consider it, extending their final development plan, I'd like you to be ensured, I would like to have a finalized that he sells that portion of property to me. Working with Mr. Schaub has been very difficult as far as the pond is concerned. There's been a lot of questions about it. And the initial thing that Mr. Schaefer suggested a long time ago, that it's not good to have the pond shared by 29 homeowners and a single individual home is correct. And so I just ask that you do that. Also, normally it'd be void at the end of 3 years, the final development plan, though there is a provision for extension. But as the township has passed the Hoover water overlay, there might be some conditions in there that would be important to take a look at. And then as a condition of extending the final development plan, I think you might be able to work that in too. Even though it was submitted 3 years ago, this is a request for an extension. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment?
Joe Miller, 52 East Gay Street. I had not intended to speak tonight, but I'll respond directly to Mr. Carter because I'm here on behalf of the Nest at Hoover, Inc. And frankly, I'm a little disappointed. I pride myself on only coming to meetings where the crowd is there for what I'm here for, so I'm a little disappointed the room emptied out. I won't respond directly to Mr. Carter's allegations about sale of the pond. Suffice it to say, Mr. Shively stands by all of the conditions for approval, and obviously the development will go forward if those conditions are deemed not to have been met. I would submit to you that extending the approval of the development plan is the right thing to do, as the Regional Planning Commission decided unanimously. You're merely to evaluate, is it not in the public interest to grant an extension? This is a very modest development, unanimously approved 3 years ago. there are extenuating circumstances from the extension of sewer service, COVID-19, and current market conditions, but we're working through those issues and plan fully to start the development in 2024. So I ask that you do please move forward and grant that extension as regional planning did as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone, public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. I want to make a clarification that when this development was approved, I abstained. So it was a two yeses, one abstention, and so it wasn't unanimous, my point. All right, move on to trustee comments.
I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
Anything either?
Okay. I have two things. I've been communicating with residents that I've been working with SourcePoint to provide 3 classes for seniors, and the next class is going to be Wednesday, May 17th in the Township Hall from 1:30 to 2:30. And the topic is Seniors Against Scams. And I think I was looking on the website today, if I recall correctly, like 11 spots left, something like that. So that'll be in a couple weeks. Also, SourcePoint reached out to me because they've had some requests from residents in Genoa Township. They are holding a health and wellness expo on Saturday, June 3rd. And from 9 to 11:30, residents in Genoa Township have requested transportation to SourcePoint on that day. So there will be a bus leaving Township Hall at 10 a.m. that day, and it will return at noon if any residents are looking for a ride. And then finally, I had Pat talk about the CIC, and we've had first Don Ranke and then Commissioner Benton talk about the land bank. And wanted to ask the other board members what they think of, Pat had talked about joining the Delaware County Foundation instead of creating our own CIC in March. And at the Parks Committee meeting last night, we discussed the survey that they did, and we had 180, I think, residents participate in the survey. There were quite a few in the comments that talked about having food trucks in our parks and events. And that's the one of the reasons I looked into the CIC. So that is something residents are asking for. We're not allowed to do it currently because we're not allowed to accept money. But that was kind of the point of going through the Delaware County Foundation. Right. So I wanted to know if I had the board's consensus to ask Pat and Paul to look into what it would take for Genoa to join that organization again, or foundation. And Pat, if you want to comment.
Sure, we talked about the foundation being a vehicle for us to collect donations and then administer those donations, taking us out of that and allowing us to do some of the things you're talking about here legally. And it doesn't matter why we're not part of the foundation anymore. I don't care about the past. But I think it's a good idea. There's not a bunch of money involved in being part of that foundation. It gives us an opportunity to do some things for the residents that we wouldn't normally be able to do in some of those outdoor activities and things like that. So if you guys are okay with it, Donna and I will reestablish that relationship with Foundation and Paul, and we'll come back to you maybe in the next meeting in June and say, here's what we need to do to reestablish. Do you want to? Yes, we do. Okay, great. Pass a resolution. We'll reestablish the account, and Donna can do the accounting piece of it and go forward that way. But all I really need is a consensus saying, yeah, go figure it out, Pat, and then we'll talk about it.
I think ultimately it would take a resolution it would come back to us, but this is just giving Pat permission to start.
It's just asking me to do this task for you, basically. I mean, and I have no problem doing it. Donna and I and Paul as well. We can call the folks up there. We have a relationship there, and just say, what are the 1, 3, 5, 7 things we need to do to reestablish that? Whatever that is, and I can come back to you.
I have no problem reestablishing it. In fact, I didn't totally agree when it was abolished previously. And I think it was a wonderful way for us to accept donations for parks, et cetera, that we're having a little more difficulty with the process now. So I would be completely in favor of it.
Why was it discontinued?
I don't know. I wasn't here.
You know, Connie?
There was a former trustee that did not believe it was in the best interest of the township, and thus it was abolished.
There are administrative fees. We do have to pay.
Yeah.
Right, to pay them. But without paying that small amount of fee, we can't do any of the things that they do for us. So it's, in my opinion, it's worth the pennies of, it's kind of like bank fees, you know what I mean? Analysis fees on your bank statements in the business account. It's just one of those things, right? But it's okay because they administer all that stuff for you. This particular person, at that time, didn't want that to happen, and I think it was a pick a battle thing for the rest of the board and said, okay, fine. You know,
And I think the benefit that we get, it well outweighs the fees that were paid,
and the
as I
CI
recall.
The problem I have with CIC versus the foundation is the administration of it and all the legalities and rules fall back on us on that CIC, where with the foundation, they're taking ownership of that for us. So, and the plots, the garden plots, things like that, we can collect money for those type of things through the foundation and they administer for us. So, but again, we're welcome to come back in June with a more exactly what it would take to reestablish it for you, and you guys can vote on it.
You can do that by June.
Yeah.
You good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, that's all I had. All right, thank you for that. I believe Human Resources, but Paul, you're going to take that?
Yes. Please excuse Linda this evening. She went home sick and asked that I cover her agenda items. First off, I asked the board to accept the resignation of Tristan Burton effective April 25th.
I'll move to accept the resignation of Tristan Burton effective April 25th, 2023. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Antonez?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes. Motion carries.
Next up, every year we hire seasonal laborers. They give us a date when they know it, when they're going to be out of school. And this year, we're going to hire 5 young men to work with our department to do laborers, cutting grass, weed whacking, whatever Bob thinks that they need to do, they'll do it. So ask the board for a resolution to hire those 5 gentlemen.
I'll move to hire the following as a seasonal laborer with the Parks Department: Luke Weithman, effective 5/15/2023 at $18 per hour. Thomas Bovink, effective May 1st, 2023 at $18 per hour. Will Kaufman, effective May 30th, 2023 at $18 per hour. Jeremy Kellner, effective to be determined, $18 per hour. And Noah Smith, effective to be determined, $18 an hour. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion?
Yeah, just a question about what is the term length of this seasonal?
They are hired for a period of time, and they usually disappear about near the end of summer to go back to college. So all these kids are going to college, so,
Okay, so none of these will be permanent.
no.
Usually Labor Day-ish type, you know, that right around there. When it's summer, when the mowing kind of ends and all that stuff, right?
Any other discussion? Okay, yeah.
We did raise the hourly rate for these folks, and I wondered if that helped us at all in getting
Yes, it did.
hirees.
It did. Thank you for raising that last year, because it did help us recruit people, because in the past, we wouldn't even had 5.
Yeah.
And, but this
Last
is
couple of years, we've only had a couple.
much easier now with the higher rate
Yeah.
to recruit.
Good.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, roll call?
Mr. Antonez?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
So motion carries. Next, also Paul?
Communications, Leslie's parents, this is their actual 50th anniversary today. So I guess it's 7 o'clock. They're planning a surprise birthday or surprise anniversary party.
I hope they're not listening,
So-
Paul.
No, I doubt that.
Surprise.
Going to do once
Whoops.
50 years, right? This is their excitement. No, but I'm going to go ahead and take care of Leslie's update on the website. I'm going to read where we are with the updating. Contents successfully migrated out, and Leslie was given full access to edit the new website. Any changes to the old website during this time will not be automatically transferred. So all of us staff have been asked not to make any essential changes for the period current period. She's nearing the end of the 2-week quality assurance process. During this time, the website company Revise asks that she does not make any requests for repairs on the new website so that they can work through any of the issues on their own. So she's keeping a list of the glitches, and we'll ask them to clarify them once their quality assurance period ends. Concurrent with the quality assistance, she's making rapid progress editing the new website. However, she's having to rebuild most of the department pages, which is time-consuming. Once these pages are prepared, she'll circulate them to the department directors for review and editing. Next, she will send a link to the trustees to review, and we will set up a go-live date with Revise. Once our new site is live, the old site will be deleted from the live server, as well as CMS's servers, after 15 days. There will be no history of the old site, so we will want to make sure everything we may need from the old site has been saved for reference. I do not have a firm date for the time frame until launch, mostly due to knowing how long it'll take Revise to repair some of the glitches I've identified. My best estimate is 2 weeks. That's her update.
Thank you.
If I may also add,
Yep.
since I'm the liaison to that committee, the Communications Committee itself has committed to helping review these pages, each taking a certain section and seeing how they work, if they work, any problems, so that before it goes to the final steps, there'll be another set of, 6 eyes, 12 eyes, 6 pairs that go across. Okay?
Perfect. Yes, and I want to thank the Communications Committee for working on that, because Leslie's shared information with me. It's a long time coming, because they've been working on it for a while. So I'm looking forward to see the final product. Next, in administration?
Yes, now we go over to administration. For the past 2 months, the county prosecutor has been working with Liberty, Orange, and Genoa Townships on revising updating the bid specs for a new bid out for the waste hauler contract. Just for the public's information, the contract's expiring January 31st, 2024. So we're trying to get the bid specs ready and everything out early, so in case there's a change of a contractor, we won't have, well, it'll allow them additional times to buy trucks and start working about the transfer of power, I guess. So in your packet this evening is a resolution that all 3 townships have, and it's a resolution to proceed on with the contract, which will start soon. Just to give you some timeline of what's happening, after all 3 boards approve this resolution, we're going to go out for advertisement and have a period of 2 weeks from May 13th to May 20th for advertisements. The request for bids going to be issued on the Monday, the 15th of May. So others can start reviewing that on our all of our websites, and there'll be a listing in the Delaware Gazette, a legal notice directing all the bidders to our websites. We'll have a pre-bid conference on June 6th, and where we'll answer questions by all the interested parties. Written questions will be due back by the 9th, and all the bids are due in the June 15th at 10:55, and we'll open those at June 15th at 11 a.m. The intent is for after the review period and grading of each of the bids, resolutions will be, a contract to be executed will go to all 3 boards. So we're expecting that the week of July 20th. So that'll give you a little update. We're ahead of last bid period, which was 6 years ago. This is a 3-year contract with the ability to bid it out or to renew it for another 3 years. So as of date, the Orange Township Board has passed it, and Liberty Township's board will be meeting Monday, so I ask the board for your approval this evening.
All right, I'll move to approve the resolution to proceed on a joint request for bids with Orange and Liberty Townships for the collection, transfer, and disposal of solid waste by an independent contractor, RC 505.27, as presented. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion.
Yeah, I do. I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
The item 2 says the board, which I assume is us, have the ability to review all submitted bids before making final determination, but then 4 says that the township administrator has the authority at his discretion to enter into an intergovernmental agreement. How do those two reconcile?
So, once the bids are collected, there's a 4-member committee that's set up by the specifications. The administrators from Orange, Liberty, and Genoa, and the deputy, or the director of the Delaware, Knox, Marion, Morrow Solid Waste District will meet and grade all of the bids, and then make the recommendation to the board on the best bidder.
Okay, does it then require all 3 townships to agree?
Yes.
And what if one doesn't agree?
Then there's
we're
no-
not included?
There's no contract. This
And then
contract
we would
is,
have to go out and solicit our own
yes,
proposal bid.
yes. If
Okay.
one's out, then the remaining 2 could go on their own,
Right.
or we could go on our own.
Okay. That's all.
Anything else from anybody else?
Paul, would you give just Trustee Antonette's wasn't here when this happened last time. Maybe the reasoning behind why we went from a single trash hauler to this group of 3 townships.
So there's power in numbers. And so when we were one entity, we had 9, well, back then it was probably about 6,000 or 7,000 rooftops. So now we're up to about 8,000 rooftops. The whole committee amongst the 3 townships, the whole township bid is close to 29,000 housetops. So this is a very lucrative bid with, this is going to be very interesting bid for a lot of waste haulers. So when there's this much interest, the prices will come down so that they can try to be a successful winner. We've gone out to bid for single haulers simply, originally way back, and you were on the original waste hauler committee.
Yes,
We
I was.
wanted to reduce the number of truck traffic on our roads, and we've done that. We've had 1 truck for recycling and the other for garbage. So it's been successful, and we've consistently received lower bids than any other communities in central Ohio. So there's power in numbers.
Yeah, makes sense.
The last time, was it 2 years ago? We negotiated and it was a renewal, and we had compared waste removal from several other neighboring townships, so we were the lowest. We got more service for less.
And there are also some that don't bid because they're not large enough to handle the
Right.
capacity that we have, and they don't have the resources to buy additional trucks, et cetera. So we only get those people that can do this magnitude.
Right.
And one other note, other public entities with whoever the successful bidder will be, have the ability to piggyback on this contract to get our terms. So we have to, all 3 townships have to agree along with the contractor. So,
Okay,
Thank you.
anything else? Roll call?
Mr. Antoinette? Ms. Goodman?
Yes,
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
thank you. Next up is a resolution that would recreated cost sharing amongst the 3 townships. If I were you, I'd be in favor of this because we're footing the bill for the advertisement. That's the major cost of this. So I ask the board to approve the next resolution.
Okay, I'll move to approve a resolution to enter into an intergovernmental cost-sharing agreement with Orange Township and Liberty Township for administration of the joint bid for the collection, transfer, and disposal of solid waste by an independent contractor, as presented. Do I have a second?
second?
Discussion.
How much are we talking about?
It's a very lengthy advertisement, so it'll probably be a couple $1,000.
Oh, okay.
so we'll share the cost equally.
Okay, very good. Roll call?
Mr. Antoinette? Ms. Goodman? Yes. Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Next up, I just want to give the board an update. Last year, when the board authorized the township to purchase a new vehicle for the office, we went out and purchased a 2023 Chevy Equinox. Purchase price of that was about $28,500. We bought it from a local contractor, and we then, once we received it in and equipped it, it's now roadworthy because has the Genoa label on the side and it's got strobes, so it's being used primarily. As soon as it was on the road, we did take our 2010 Chevy Colorado and put it up for auction. So we utilize an auction called Gov Deals, and I went by the NADA value for that vehicle. I found that the value at the time was about $7,800, so we started the bidding at $7,800. I just want to report to the board the auction's over, and the last couple hours of the auction, there was a bidding war, which is good for us. We ended up selling that Chevy Colorado for $14,000, and that's a win because it basically paid for half of the new Equinox. So we're really happy with those results.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Very good. Thanks for sharing, Paul. Anything else?
One other item,
Oh, okay.
moving into the levy.
Oh, okay.
At the last meeting, there was a consensus vote to move ahead with the terms and conditions of the Parks levy, which is expiring on December 31st. You wanted to go with a 5-year term for a .6 mill levy. The county prosecutor's office and the Board of Elections has been working with the Secretary of State because the new format for resolutions is now complete. This came hot off the press this afternoon, and it's in your hands now. And I asked the board to approve the levy for it's called a resolution of necessity. So once we have this, Pat will have your signatures on it and send this levy up to the auditor's office for certification. This is the first step in getting a road levy put on the ballot. Just for your information, deadline for putting everything onto the ballot is August 9th. So we're ahead of schedule, but we want to try to keep on track because we don't do things at the last minute here.
Okay, I'll move to approve a resolution of necessity to levy an additional tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation.
10 mil.
10, okay, I'm like, what? Okay, thank you. 10 mil limitation for the purpose of parks and recreational purposes, RC 570503, 5705.19, H 5705.191, 5705.192, and 5705.25 as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you, and if you could sign that, we'll send it up for the next step. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm finished.
You sure? Thanks, Paul. All right, next we'll turn it over to fire.
Good evening, Board. Just I'll be quick and easy with you all this evening. Just one item for you this evening. Battalion Chief Corey Weekly has completed his course of studies for his bachelor's degree through Columbia Southern University in Fire Administration. His sealed transcript has been turned into HR Director Linda Greco, and I would request a resolution to approve his education incentive per the township policy in the amount of $1 per hour upon your passage.
Okay, I'll move to approve the education incentive in the amount of $1 per hour for Battalion Chief Corey Weekly for a bachelor's degree per the Genoa Township Personnel Policy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Antoinette? Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes. Carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations to Battalion Chief Weekly. All right, next, turn it over to police again.
Deputy Chief McMillan is going to cover the first two items with some fiscal matters.
Good evening, Board. I have a couple of items that I'm going to request from the Board this evening, and anything that I'm presenting has previously been approved at various meetings, but due to some miscommunication, paperwork wasn't signed, and so the process didn't go all the way through. I met with Donna and Fiscal over the past week, and we felt that the best way to move forward with it was to get all the items reapproved from the Board tonight, so it's all on one agenda and through the process. So the first item I'm going to request the Board to approve is a permanent appropriation for the Police Station Capital Fund in the amount of $120,000. That was, a couple of meetings ago, we talked about the leftover bond money from the police station once all of the bills were paid, and we do have some items that we want to continue to work on, and we didn't move that money into a final appropriation, so that's where that request is coming from.
Okay, I'll move to approve the permanent appropriations for the Police Station Capital Projects Fund in the amount of $120,000. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman? Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
The next one is about the storage barn that we did on the last meeting. Because we didn't appropriate the money, we have to come back and request it. So the next request, I'm going to request the Board to approve a then and now purchase order to Larry Dorn Associates in the amount of $36,000 for the construction of the storage barn at the police station.
Okay, I'll move to approve a then and now purchase order to Larry Dorr and Associates LLC in the amount of $36,000 for the construction of a storage barn at the police station. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion.
Yeah, what's then and now mean?
It means we've already done it. We're coming back and asking for reapproval. He's been paid.
Roll call.
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman? Yes. Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
And just for one last clarification on that, we have not paid him. We've signed the contract.
Agreement, right.
Yep, we signed off on the contract and then realized the money hadn't been transferred. I'm gonna, last month, you guys approved $42,000 because I had brought up the need to run electric and put in some shelving in there, but we were gonna do that after the fact, so we didn't pay the additional contractor fees. Due to needing to make Larry Doors a then and now, I have to separate those requests. So the next request I'm gonna have for the Board is I'm gonna request the Board to approve a blanket purchase order in the amount of $6,000 for the construction of the storage barn at the police station, and that would be, once the building's constructed, that electricity and the ancillary items.
Okay, I'll move to approve a blanket purchase order in the amount of $6,000 for the construction of a storage barn at the police station. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion?
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
The next request I'm gonna have for the Board is to deal with police cruisers. Towards the end of last year, we made a request to the Board to add 2 additional police cruisers to what was already 2 ordered, for a total of 4 police cruisers. When we came to the Board, we made that request to purchase the 2 cars earlier than we normally would because of the delay in getting the cars and that Ford had said that they were gonna shut their manufacturing down. The Board approved them and we made those orders. Once again, because of some signatures, we didn't get the money transferred over correctly. So the next request I'm gonna have for the Board is to approve a resolution to transfer of unencumbered money from the Township Police Fund to the Township Police Capital Outlay Fund in the amount of $30,000.
Okay, I'll move to approve the transfer of unencumbered money from the Township Police Fund to the Township Police Capital Outlay Fund as presented. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Antoinette? Yes. Ms. Goodman? Yes. Ms. Vaughn?
Yes. Motion carries.
And then the last request for me is going to be asking for purchase orders for those. So what I'm going to ask the Board for is I'm going to request the Board to approve the following then and now purchase orders for the purchase of and equipment of the new police cruisers. Reineke Ford of Findlay in the amount of $127,510, and then Par Public Safety in the amount of $65,000.
Okay, I'll move to approve the following then and now purchase orders for the purchase of and equipment for new police cruisers. Reineke Ford of Findlay in the amount of $127,510, and Par Public Safety in the amount of $65,000. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion.
Clarify the number of vehicles in this?
It will be for, the monies we're asking for is to purchase and equip 4 total vehicles.
That's why I want to make sure it's on the record.
You good with that?
Not one vehicle for $127,000.
Yeah.
Four,
Amend the motion to say 4 new vehicles.
We only need 5 more 2010 Colorados.
I will second the amended motion.
Okay, thank you. Yep, okay, I'm good with that.
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman? Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
that's it for me tonight, Board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on those 4 cruisers, I think it's good that we bought all 4 instead of 2 this year and 2 next year, because we've been told Ford is not going to be making any next year. That's what was, and the nice thing is, we've already received all 4 of the cruisers. So we're going to take 4 older cruisers out of the fleet. We're going to sell 3 on gov deals, and we're going to strip 1 and give it to Bob for use within the township to save the township some money. So he's going to have to do a couple repairs on it, but should be good. The first item I have is an MOU between us and the Ohio Police Benevolent Association. This arose from a grievance that was filed by the union. We had some officers wanted to go to medical appointments during the day, and they wanted to use vacation time to go instead of sick leave time. The way the contract read, it looked like you had to use sick leave time to do that, and you couldn't use any other leave. In talking to Paul and Linda, they were fine with that, and they felt that really what that meant was in addition to other leaves. So we changed the language. The union's withdrawing the grievance, and we changed the language to say that they can basically take any permissible leave to go to those medical appointments.
Okay, I'll move to approve the Memorandum of Understanding, Article 22.3, use of sick leave as presented, effective May 4th, 2023. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
The next item is at last month's meeting, you approved another MOU with the union that allowed us and fire to hire folks between A and D step. It also allowed for any employees that currently were eligible to be bumped up to that step retroactively. And afterwards, I went back and looked, and we have 3 officers. They all came to us from the Highway Patrol with 3 years' experience. They've been with us for a year now, so I'm requesting to advance Brandon Blackwelder, Marissa Guyton, and Carissa Webb up to D step.
I'll move to amend Resolution 23-0406-007, Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, Article 14.2, Step Advancement in the Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association officers to include the following: full-time police officers Brandon Blackwelder, Marissa Guyton, and Carissa Webb shall be advanced to Step D, starting at the beginning of the pay period in which this Memorandum of Understanding is ratified by both parties, which was April 6, 2023. Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Antoinette? Ms. Goodman? Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries.
2 other brief items. Our officer, Joe Washington, who was deployed to Iraq for most of the last year, has safely returned home, so we're very happy about that. He'll be returning to work June 5th after some military-allotted vacation time. Second item, just want to mention a case our detectives are working on I thought was pretty interesting. Good crime prevention tip. We had several $1,000s worth of golf clubs stolen from one of our local country clubs, and one of the golfers had put an Apple AirTag in his golf bag. So with that, we were able to locate that item, and we went down to the search warrant down in an apartment complex in Columbus. Found the golf bag, did not find the clubs, but we found out that they were being sold on Facebook Marketplace and at some secondhand stores. We identified the suspect, who was a former employee. So just kind of interesting that you can use that Apple iTag as a locating device for some of your valuables, something to think about. So that's all I have.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Next, we have Joe Schaefer with zoning.
Good evening, trustees. I didn't know if you wanted to start with the item that's on the agenda or the item that was brought up during public
That's
comment.
totally up to you.
I'll address the item on public comment first. So, as you sort of all have figured out by now, the developer of the Nest at Hoover yesterday did submit a request to have their deadline for their final development plan approval extended. Copy of that request has been forwarded to each of you. I know since we just got it late yesterday, you may or may not have had a chance to really look it over. So at this point, I'm just, happy to entertain any questions about the situation. If you have questions that maybe I don't know that you want me to look into, I can certainly try to make a list of those. Really, I'm just sort of out here essentially just putting on the public record that we did receive the request and the ball's sort of in the trustees' court. It's uncharted water for us. I don't think we've had one expire or request for an extension in my 7.5 years here. And even prior to that, I'm not sure I can recall it ever seeing it in the record of anyone ever doing it. So we are operating under the code that existed at the time that plan was approved back in 2020, and all the code says is it's basically valid for 3 years. But the Board of Trustees does have the right to entertain an extension and that process does not require a public hearing pursuant to the zoning resolution. So again, sorry for spur of the moment. They requested an extension, they being the developer, requested an extension from regional planning for the preliminary subdivision plan a few weeks ago, and regional planning granted that last week, and then that's what triggered in my mind, hey, I need to contact them because the subdivision plan and the zoning plans are two different things. And what regional planning does and what we do are separate things. So I emailed the developer and clarified that he would need a similar extension from us. And then that's why you have this before you. And I wanted to make sure I gave him a heads up in May, so that way if there was some lead time or some time that the board needed to think about this issue, that if you don't make a decision this evening, you do have your regular meeting on June 1st to further discuss and or make a decision, because the plan is set to expire June, I believe, 18th of this year. So with that, I sort of throw it back to you.
I did review regional planning's minutes, and it confused me because it does say preliminary development plan or subdivision. What's the confusion? Why isn't it the final development plan that they're approving?
Because it's what regional planning is reviewing is not the zoning plans, it's the plat.
Oh, the plat.
Yeah, so it's basically they're asking for a continuance on the validity of the approval of the preliminary plat that was granted a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yep.
Process.
And what we are addressing is the final development plan that was approved as it was granted, correct? Not any changes or anything like that.
Correct, it would be the plan that was approved as of that date in June of 2023. I heard during the public comment there was potential of, some changes, lines being moved, stuff regarding the pond. As far as I'm concerned, I would administer and enforce the plan that was approved back in June of 2020. If something like what was discussed during public comment was desired by the developer, in my mind, my gut reaction, without doing further research into it, but my gut reaction is they'd have to file a development plan amendment and go through our development plan amendment process. But they haven't done that, so until they do that, as far as technically speaking, my office is concerned, they have to do the plan that was approved in 2020 until they officially request not to.
And given the timing that we're looking at, if the extension were not granted, it would be somewhat of a moot point to do a final development plan amendment. Am I correct?
If the extension wasn't granted, correct, they'd have to come back and if the then
Start
plan
over.
expired, they'd essentially have to come back and get a new final development plan.
Okay. But if there's an extension, then, and the applicant chose to make some changes, then that final development plan amendment could be addressed within that extension period. Is that right?
To the best of my knowledge, yes,
Okay.
but they would have to, they would have to file that.
Okay.
It really would be no different if this was 2 years ago and we were a year into the process and they decided to want to make a change. We'd be in the same position. They would just have to file the amendment.
I have a lot of questions. I need to do some research, and so, but nothing I really want to discuss right now.
Okay, like I said, I wanted to at least formally present it to you, even though I'm sort of the third person to talk about it at this point, but this evening. But at least, if nothing else, get it on the public record that the request is out there, like I said, since it's a little atypical, but I know a lot of people listen to these meetings and may find out that way.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we may not have to give the public notice, but I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I can talk to, I'll certainly, you know, if you're thinking that we'll just have this on your June agenda, I'll make sure I circle back with council just to make sure there isn't anything we have to do. But, you know, obviously, if the board is telling me you want me to run an ad for it, you know, then that's the board's directive and that's what I'll do.
Okay. Well, I think I'm fine with putting it on the June agenda. I think that gives us plenty of time to prepare.
Mhm.
And also notice to the public, and this being the first notice.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else? All right.
For the other item, I'm actually going to sit down if you don't mind, because we do have, it's a zoning hearing, we'll have an applicant, so I'm assuming they'll want to come up here and speak at the podium.
You want me to call it to order?
Yes.
Okay. This time, I'm going to open the case number ZC 2022-07, Multi-Sound Studios Zoning Map Amendment, AKA rezoning and preliminary development plan at 7:22 PM. Daniel Bino requesting approval of a rezoning and preliminary development plan to convert and extend an existing residence for commercial use on approximately 1.209 acres at 6463 Maxtown Road, Westerville, Ohio, 43082. PIN 317-341-05002-000, currently zoned rural residential, seeking rezoning to planned commercial district, also known as Multi-Sound Studios, ZC case number 2022-07, continued from March 21st, 2023. At this time, I'll ask that anybody who wishes to speak be sworn in at this time. Stand and speak. Okay. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
No.
Thank you. The following exhibits were added or updated. Exhibit H, staff memo dated April 28th, 2023 for May 4th, 2023. Exhibit I, staff technical review dated April 28th, 2023 for May 4th, 2023. Exhibit J, all public comments received between November 4th, 2022 and May 4th, 2023. This time I'll hand it over to Joe Schaefer.
Thank you, Trustee Vaughn. So as you noted, this is continuance of the zoning hearing from March 21st regarding the multi-sound studio rezoning and preliminary development plan proposal, CC case number 2022-07. I am not going to go back and rehash the entirety of the proposal. As you well know, just big picture for those sitting in the room who aren't really caught up to speed on what we're talking about. This is a proposal to convert the existing house at the subject address to a studio that bands can rehearse in, be completely soundproof. The request for rezoning, as you noted in the legal ad, is to plan commercial. The board heard most of the discussion and presentation during the meeting back in March, but there was an outstanding question related to parking spaces, and then staff also wanted some updated lot coverage measurements. Staff, or I should say the board, was a little concerned about the number of parking spaces that were proposed, and especially since a divergence was being requested. So the applicant has revised the materials, and even after some discussion with me, revised them again late last week. So now the divergence related to parking is essentially, for the initial renovation, the number of parking spaces proposed would be 7. The number required under code would be 17. So the difference there obviously is 10. And then if they were to build the expansion, build out the site that they have shown on the drawings, the number of parking space, they'd build an additional, sorry, I think I even have the number here wrong in the document. I have it as 10, but that is incorrect. They
18?
essentially would expand the parking lot,
18.
yeah, to a total of 25 spaces is what they're looking to do. So, but the code would require 42 at total build-out. So basically, the difference there is approximately the 17 spaces. Divergence is really what they're asking for at the end of the day for the totality of the site. So, and then they did provide me updated lot coverage information that takes into account the entire build-out of the site. So we finally have that number in there. And I never thought it was going to come close to being a compliance concern, but we wanted to make sure we had the number right on paper, so that's also reflected in the memo. So with that, Madam Chairwoman, I don't believe there was any other outstanding items the board was looking for, so I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, very good. I'll turn it over to the applicant. If you would like to add anything, feel free to come up to the podium.
Thank you again for
Name
having
and-
us over here.
Name and address for the record.
Oh, Daniel Bino, 6463 Maxtown Road, Westerville, Ohio 43082. I'm sorry, my wife and I just got back from New York and before that overseas, so I'm a little bit jet lagged. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the fine men and women of law enforcement being here, and thank you. We feel very safe having you. And my wife and I moved here 3 years ago, almost, and from New York, and feel a lot more safer over here. Back to the issue at hand over here. So yeah, Mr. Schaefer covered everything pretty well, and I have nothing else to add, but hopefully this gets approved, as we're looking forward and very eager to start our business here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I will open it up to public comment. If you'd like to speak, state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Rick Wieland. I'm at 9500 Britton Woods Drive, and I'd like to address the parking issue that you guys were bringing up at the last meeting or whatever. I think it's a very low standard for the parking on there as far as what he's required to do for the square footage of the buildings that he wants to put on there, to offer a divergence of almost 50% for the parking spaces. He said previously that he might only have 20% occupancy in his buildings at times. So I kind of question why they need the extra building with all that extra square footage if he's only having 20% occupancy in the original building. And then I want to bring up, I don't know if you guys addressed section 1905 in the zoning resolution for that, which is the off-street parking loading areas. I don't believe that was discussed at all from any of your zoning commission meetings or your guys' the last meeting. So I want you to consider that in this application, because I don't believe it's in there. I didn't see anything on it, and it needs to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment?
My name's Paul Keene, I live at 6861 Springwood Drive, Westerville, Ohio, 43002. Just do some clarification as to what this business is going to be engaged in. Is it a dance studio? Is that what I heard?
Music. Music studio, soundproof rooms. They're saying no noise will be
Okay.
heard outside the building.
So it's going to be a recording studio?
Yeah. Well,
basically.
not in practice. Bands, single musicians.
I believe the bands will be able to record themselves if they wish, but the space itself is just for them to rehearse in.
Practice.
Okay. All right.
Yep. Good?
Thank you. Yep.
All right, seeing there's nobody else here for public comment. I'll move on. So I'll close public comment at this time. Would the applicant or Joe Schaefer want to address any of the concerns that came up?
Regarding the parking, the divergence request is what it is, so I think it's up to the board at this point to just decide whether or not you're comfortable with it. From a planning perspective, us planners are always looking to have sites have the least amount of parking spaces possible these days. For decades, we've been over-parking sites and creating a lot of impervious surface that's aesthetically not pleasing and not great for stormwater and just not great for the environment in general. So I have no problem with sites decreasing the parking. As far as the loading area, again, usually I only look for that if it's a business that I know is going to be consistently engaging in loading activities. This doesn't, I mean, I know the bands will be loading and unloading their equipment necessarily, but it's not like we have trucks coming in and out and delivering pallets of material or something. So usually I only look at that standard when we've got a loading area actually proposed on a site.
Joe, Mr. Benos, you can come back up.
And then I don't have anything to add unless Mr. Bino has any questions.
Just to add to the parking situation, I guess, in some of the question that was, I guess the gentleman has left, in relation to what the business is, it's music rehearsal, but it's also recording. Anything that has to do actually with sound preservation. We actually just signed a young lady in New York in our building there who partakes in ASMR therapies. She does that online, and she records herself on video, and it's something that's very, I was not aware of that, and she needed a place that's gonna be soundproof, because she can do that in her apartment in Manhattan. So it's not just bands, it's anybody that actually looks for a quiet building will enjoy being a client of ours, since our emphasis is indeed on soundproof. In relation to, gentlemen, your name? I'm sorry, I forget. Rick. To work, Rick was saying as far as expansion, if our business is successful, we would love to expand, of course, with the parking ratio in mind. And the reason why what we are experiencing in New York, and we expect it to be the same over here since we've been doing it for 44 years, is that the parking is, at the most, will be, as we experience it right now in New York, will be between 10 to 20%. That means from 50 units that we have in New York, we don't even have 10 parking spots that are full at any given time. That's a rarity. So that, if we do expand and add an addition, we will have the same ratio relate to that as well. And of course, if we run out of rooms, people basically store their equipment in the room, so that doesn't mean necessarily that they're all the time parking their cars.
So to clarify,
Yes.
one individual or a group of individuals, if it's a band, will rent one room.
Correct.
So that's why you say 20% will be in there at your location at one time, because when that person who's rented the one room isn't there, there's no car.
activity. Usually, and again, and just to touch on that, I know we spoke, and I'm pretty sure you were here last time as well. The way that it works is a band or a producer or a therapist now will rent a room and situate his or her facility to their requirements and needs. And at that point, they will come, from our experience, between once or twice a week to rehearse or to partake in recording sessions. And so the math stands stronger on the sides that we have of 10 to 20%. And the other thing to also remember is that we have a big property there, and we have no problem allotting all of it for parking if we need, and there's ample space over there. And again, my wife and I would love to have more nature than asphalt if possible. But other than that, we have no objection to add parking as we see fit. And as we mentioned in the first meeting that we had, we can use that as a test run for the first phase and see exactly what the occupancy is as far as parking spots are concerned, and then moving on to the second phase.
Okay. Very good.
And Yeah, and I'm sorry that I'm a little jittery today. I'm
It's okay.
just
Thank you.
really,
New York
no
will do that
sleep in
to
the
you.
past two days. We literally got here at 5 a.m. yesterday.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, move on to the divergence review.
If that's what you're ready to do.
I have some.
Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
yes, sir.
Well, sorry.
Discussion?
I didn't see that on here. Yeah, I skipped it. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm with Joe. The less asphalt, the better. My concern is if your operation, you're not gonna be able to control whether it's full or not. You might anticipate it's 20%, but in the event that some particular reason, everybody shows up and they're parking in the grass, what enforcement do we have?
If they're parking in the grass, I would tell them that is not a designated parking area per your development plan. You guys need to figure out a way to solve your parking problem, or you're gonna have to come in for amendment, or we're gonna be in front of a judge dealing with a zoning violation, so
Okay, so.
those are the
that
remedies.
Leads me to a couple of follow-ups. One is, will someone be there as a manager while it's open?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a property manager in New York as we speak. Always, we're going to be there 24/7.
How are you gonna be there
Buffer.
24/7?
Well, not in the premise, but in the area. We're not going to live there, of course, but we'll be able to monitor it when we're there.
Okay,
Uh,
so
there-
my concern is, I appreciate that you're underparked, and I appreciate the fact that we don't have this use in our code directly. It probably should be based on the number of units, not square foot. If you have one great big room, the square footage is irrelevant, but that's for us to deal with. So my concern is, where's your facility in New York?
In Whitestone, Queens.
I don't know where that is. Is that
Um,
suburban?
North suburban.
Okay. All right, that answers my question, because if you were in Manhattan, obviously your parking is way different than Genoa
Yeah.
Township, because we all drive here.
We
New York
all drive
doesn't
in Whitestone as well.
Okay.
Uh,
And obviously, you don't want this, you want this operation to be successful. And
Sure,
if they
absolutely.
can't park there, they're not going to go there.
Of course, and we want to comply, of course, with everything that you see fit to add to our business model that exists. So, you know, the only thing we're proposing is things that we know from doing, in at least under my tenure in the past two decades. And we're pretty sure we're going to hit it on, you know, on the head the same way over here. We do have a swing gate in New York, in our New York facility, and we have painted lines, and for 5 spots over there. Sorry, 7 spots with the 2 in the back, and they're most of the time they're empty. So we're basing that off of that. And we're looking to have the same situation over here as far as like having a gate, a controlled gate as far as clients getting into the studio.
Where would that be located?
Right by where we have it in the drawing there.
I didn't notice the gate either.
Not see that.
Well, the gate we can facilitate in the curb cut when getting in.
That might be too close to Maxtown Road. If there's a backup, the gate fails, there's too many people waiting, that jams up traffic on Maxtown.
Sure.
I would suggest it be further back if there's a gate.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Westerville will permit a gate in the right-of-way. Candidly, I didn't see the gate on the plans. As a reminder, though, this would, if it were to be approved, would have to come back for final, so that's one of those detail items I would figure that we could always review, but again, at exact final
I see a lot
location.
of problems with that.
Yeah, if that was just a thought, because that's what we have in New York. I know we haven't discussed it.
But a gate's no good if they can drive around the gate.
Right.
I mean, you can put a gate there, but if they can drive around the gate, then it doesn't serve any purpose.
Right.
And fire and police also need to review if there's going to be some
Correct.
restriction to the access for fire protection.
Sure.
So that's another issue that needs to be resolved, but there's a lot of,
Yeah, no, we don't have it in the plans. I just brought it up. If it's something that's gonna help, we're more than willing to do the same thing over here. But if it further complicates things, then we can just stick to what we have.
Joe.
My advice would be if that's something they want to do, maybe look at incorporating on the final, but at this stage, I feel like it might just muddy the waters.
I too am very concerned about the parking. I know that you said you drive cars in Whitehall, or
Whitestone.
Whetstone, I'm sorry, in
Sure.
Queens, and that's understandable, but I think the culture of the area of all of New York, the 5 boroughs, is very different. You have public transportation there. We really do not have that here in Genoa Township. You can get an Uber, you can get a Lyft or a taxi, but if you're taking a bus, you have to walk from Myers, and there's no
Sure.
sidewalk along there. So we tend to be very car-oriented, very vehicle-oriented. I'm having real difficulty with 7 spaces. And I expressed it last time. I worry that people will start parking in the grass. They'll start parking in the neighborhood and walking over there. They'll park illegally in someone else's parking lot. That doesn't make for good neighbors. It also means that the people whose areas are being infringed upon will start calling zoning. They'll start calling the police department. And we don't want to be the people that have to monitor that.
Sure.
As I looked at this, going from 17 down to 7 spaces is a 59% reduction. That's a lot. As I look at this, if you added 4 spaces and made this 11 instead of 7, I would be much more comfortable. But I'm having real difficulty with this 7 parking spaces.
Sure.
I just don't think that's enough. So that's where I'm at.
I tend to agree a little bit, but I'd rather this be more objective than subjective. So how many rooms are there going to be in this? Let's start there.
We're speculating there'll be between 10 and 14, depending on the construction.
So you're saying your business model will be successful if only half of them are being used at a time? Because you got 7 parking spots, that means only 7 of the 14. If all the rooms are full, you're going to need 14 spots.
Yeah, the business doesn't rely on the parking per se. I mean, like I said,
Yeah, but your best scenario is it's full.
yeah, let me just relate
Or
really
you
quick.
wouldn't have 14 rooms.
Sure,
right?
let me relate to that real quick. The bands, the musicians, the clients, they're not there at the same time. That's the only thing I can say. And, we can, like I said, I'm here to testify the truth as I know it based in New York and as I predicted to be over here. The business will be successful without having 12 concurrent parking spots used at the same time. That I can guarantee you. The other thing I wanted to say is from what I understood last time we were here, is that we're actually going to propose the additional 18, that we'll actually have them, unless I'm mistaken, but that's what we proposed last time, that we'll actually have 25 in practice and utilize 7 right away out of the gate. And if need be, we could see, if we would see right away that doesn't work. I think that's what your concern was last time. So that's the reason why, I think that's the reason why we did the amendment.
Well, and I think what I'm hearing is that we would go to 25 if and when the second structure is built. My concern is that right now for the first structure, there are only 7 parking spaces. And I personally believe that there should be a minimum of 11 for this first. If you've got 10 to 14 rooms, even if you're using half of those, but you've got 2 or 3 band members in each room and they come separately, 7 spaces is not very much. And so I would be much more comfortable if you told me you were going to do 11 spaces out of the gate. And I'm no expert on construction or asphalt or anything like that, but I would think it would be more cost-effective to put in those spaces early on when you're doing the initial parking lot than to have to call somebody back later and add 4 or however many spaces.
Sure, yep.
So,
I'm reading your documentation, and it says on page 1 of your preliminary development plan text that the first phase will have 10 studio spaces, and then you plan to add 15 in the second phase, for a total of 25 studios in all.
Yep. Yeah, that's
So
what,
10 studios, 7 parking spaces for phase 1.
correct.
So trustee Goodman, if I may, you're proposing that with the initial build that they do 11 spaces, with the understanding that they're reserving enough room to go up to, you would still keep that other number at the 25, correct? You're not looking for that number to go up, correct?
absolutely.
Okay.
That is correct.
So essentially, I believe that's the, and I think, and trustee Goodman, apologize if I'm putting words in your
You're
mouth,
fine.
but I'm going to just try to help the applicant here, especially since his project manager wasn't able to be here this evening. So I believe I think the concern here is, we understand you're reserving the area for up to 25 total spaces, and there'd be that delta between the 7 and the 25, and, you know, you're saying that, you know, if you feel like you need the parking, additional parking, that would be approved, and you'd be able to go ahead and build it. I think the concern I'm hearing, though, is on the township's end, there's really no trigger to require, if we feel like there's a parking issue, absent of threatening a zoning violation against you, there's no mechanism on our end to trigger it. So I think that's why trustee Goodman, and she's gonna correct me if I'm wrong, is asking you to maybe just increase that a few more spaces, because I think her level, it sounds like her level of comfort might be a little bit more there with the proposal. Because again, it's all about the township being able to do enforcement and making sure we get what we need.
We're all for it. We were all for it the first time. So we're good for 25 right away, if you need them.
And I'm not asking to cover that much grass with asphalt, but, because that's a lot until you get your second building. I don't have a problem with that, but I just don't think 7 are enough. So I think we need to push that number up, and I'm saying my magic number is 11. I
Okay,
can't
we're
speak
in.
for my colleagues.
I'm fine with that.
100%.
I tend to agree with your assessment about if it's a band and there's 4 members, they're all gonna show up in their own car. And so you have one room that has now taken up 4 spaces. I think you're gonna have a parking problem. And you're not gonna expand until that one is full. So now you're gonna wait till that one has 10 spaces predominantly used, maxed out, which means that's 10 cars at least.
Sure.
So, and it's your business. If it fails, that's on you. But I am concerned about the trigger that what enforcement we have when they start parking in the J.C. Manny's next door or the warehouse next door or in the street in the grass. That's my only concern.
And in other instances, when we've had, you know, I'm sure that some of your folks will be there later at night when maybe the side businesses are closed, but we always require a parking agreement between the two. So with that not here, those spaces cannot be figured in. We're looking strictly at your property.
Sure. Can I just add, we can actually, you know, we do that in New York with certain things. In New York, the issues there are different. Obviously, there's different places. We have issues with waste. Some people throw a lot of stuff, so we had to document that on contract. We have issues with the bathrooms, so we had to put that. Anything that we do with our clients, so we could easily do the same thing, just for your peace of mind, obviously. But like I said, I'm not trying to debate this at all. We're in for 11 or even more. Actually, I was, again, and the only reason why that came to be, I was under the impression that last time you requested us to have 25, factoring in the current phase 1 and assigning that, in monitoring this as phase 1 takes off and seeing indeed if 7 will be suffice, and if not, we'll use the other 18. We're good for 25, total of 25, I believe.
Yeah, it sounds like the board at this point isn't asking you at initial build to build all 25.
Absolutely.
I mean, the number I'm hearing is 11?
That's my suggestion. I don't know where you're at, because you have the same concerns, and you haven't mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an engineer, so I use statistics and
Yeah,
numbers
sure.
and not so subjective. But I think it's realistic to assume that at some point, if you determine your business is so successful enough that you need to expand, that thing is full, and that's at least 10 spots. So maybe it's 10 and 50% of that, assuming a couple rooms are gonna be more than one person. So now you're looking at maybe 15, 16 to make it even parking lot. I think that's the magic number, and then the leverage we can have is, if we're getting all these complaints, then when if Mr. Bino comes back for an expansion, we can say, well, there's no chance of that. You can't even manage the parking you have. So it's up to you, if you truly want to expand sometime, to be able to manage this thing.
Sure.
And there's no constant calls to Chief Gamble and Joe about cars parking in the.
Yeah, like I said, I was just going by what we discussed last time, and I'm an approval of 11 or any parking spots that you see fit, and we'll reinforce it, as we always do everything with our clients, as we have in the past 44 years of business in New York, which is very tough, I would say.
So having said that, I would say, assuming it's full and add 50%, so you're at 16, and then, it's not a bad investment. If you expand and you're only using half of it, your parking's half done.
And
Right.
look, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
Looking at the layout, it appears that the handicap spot is off on its own directly across from the dumpster. So we would end up with an odd number of parking spaces. So instead of 16, we could do the 15. That would add 2 across,
Oh, right.
which is why I ended up with 11.
Okay. Whatever, 15 or 16. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's more of a realistic number.
We will need to set a finite number, though. And I'll need the applicant on record that they're amending their proposal to that number if they're agreeable to it, which it sounds like Mr. Bino is, but.
Can I just add again, and again, just because we're obviously concerned of your time as well. Jason, I believe, made the parking allotment for 25 units. And let me just review this really quick again. So there are indeed 25 spots there, but some of them are like dashed out. Can we just agree that we'll just do the whole 25, like right away?
If that's your modified proposal.
Yeah, 25, and then, and again, the only reason I'm saying that is to remember that hopefully that could come into play when we do hopefully move to second phase, and monitoring what we have here in relation to the second phase. Our concern, again, is not the 25, 11, 15, or 25 spots that we have right now is what we will need to build in the future if we do expand. So again, if we commit a 25 right now, I would just like to say that, like, hopefully that could be monitored by you by next time when we do approach to do the second phase, and we wouldn't have to build another 25 or 50 if those are not being used. If that's okay with you,
I'm not okay with that. I'm not
Too much
okay
green
with
space.
over-parking speculating expansion. I think when you expand your parking, because it could never happen, and then we just have an empty parking lot.
got it.
So are you thinking
thinking
15 and bump to
15.
25
Yeah.
if and when?
If it expands.
Okay.
They are currently proposing reserving the right to expand from 15 to 25 prior to building the expansion if they felt like the
That's fine.
15 isn't
That's
enough.
fine.
Okay, I want to make sure you're
Come
okay
back
with
for
that.
the expansion and they can't substantiate the additional parking, then we don't approve it.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
So to clarify, 15 spots now.
So that 7 in that table becomes a 15.
Yep. And up to 25.
Yeah, I had an error in that table. That second line, that 10 should have been an 18, but now I guess that gets changed to 10. So I guess I was right all along. And then the 25 would remain the same. So essentially, they're asking for a divergence to reduce the total number of parking for the overall site from 42 to 25 with the understanding that they only will build 15 as part of the initial site development.
I don't want to beat this to death, but I guess I am. Why are we even considering future? Let's just approve 15, and when he comes back for expansion, then we can reevaluate parking.
Well,
Instead of granting the 25.
as part of their final, they may ask for you to approve the expansion portion as part of the final, because that would allow them then, if they decide they want to build the expansion, to just pull a zoning permit from my office as opposed to have to come back and go do a plan amendment. So there's some time and cost savings to them as
That makes
a
sense.
business.
All right.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm good with those.
And again, sorry for the back and forth.
No, this is
We're
good.
not, we don't
Thank you
know
for being
anything about.
cooperative.
This is
Yeah, of
good.
course.
This is good.
I have no idea, I have no clue about the technicalities. We're just here to obviously comply with anything you request us to do. And the good news is we have quite a bit of land to play around with, and we'll go with whatever you recommend, and we'll reinforce it with our clients contractually.
So as just a procedural matter, if a motion to approve is made for the rezoning in the preliminary development plan, you want to make sure you note that it's a modified plan as opposed, I think we have it scripted that way already, but just in case, it's with modifications. And then I think I saw Trustee Vaughn making notes, but someone will probably need to update the scripted language we had in there about the divergences as well, just to reflect the new numbers.
Okay. We'll just take it one step at a time.
We'll get it.
All right, so divergence review. So we're going to review each divergence request against the standards set forth in section 2707.05 of the Township Zoning Resolution to determine if such a request is warranted. First, section 2707.05. Divergence requests shall demonstrate how granting the request will advance public interest and general purposes of this zoning resolution by promoting or not having an adverse impact one or more of the following purposes: the conservation and protection of natural resources, scenic areas, wildlife habitat, and the historical and unique natural features of the land, the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the present and future inhabitants of Genoa Township. I should say C, the quality of life within Genoa Township through the protection of the total environment, the prevention of nuisances and hazards, and the provision of adequate light, air, and convenient access to property. D, the assurance of the compatibility of land uses, which are either adjacent or in proximity to each other. And E, the orderly development of all lands within the township to its appropriate use. And F, the most appropriate use of land to facilitate and provide adequate public and private improvements. Are we supposed to pick which one of those apply, or we think apply?
I mean, you're supposed to be looking at each divergence and deciding whether or not, any of those would be applicable to it, or essentially move.
So, if I could.
Yeah.
If there is any divergence on here that you feel like impacts these A through F,
Mm-hmm.
then we state that. Otherwise, you can say none of these will
None of them do.
affect the health, safety, morals.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, because we essentially have that clause in there that says if you feel like it doesn't really impact any of these and you're not concerned about the request, you can still grant the request.
Okay. So per section 2707.07, unless a deviation from development standards is specifically approved as a divergence, the same shall be complied with.
We don't need to read all these divergences, right, because it's already on the record?
I believe we went through them at the last meeting. I don't know if you need to rehash them, because there were other divergences other than parking. There was one, there's a whole bunch of changes to the setbacks, the building separation distances. I don't recall the board having any concerns with that at the last hearing. We all know this is a small site. We want it to be commercial, and we always knew whoever came in was probably going to need code relief to setbacks and building separation because of the nature of the site, just like we saw with J.C. Manning.
So you're saying I have to read these or no?
I mean, it might not be a bad idea just
Okay, I'm
to
gonna read 'em.
refresh the record.
Okay, so number one, divergence from section 1203.01 to rezone a parcel of less than 5 acres to planned commercial district. divergence from section 1203.03A to reduce setbacks from residential properties as per development text, divergent section 1203.03B to reduce setbacks of visual and mechanical barrier as per development text, 4, divergence from section 1208.01 to reduce minimum building separation as per development text, and 5, divergent from section 1904.18 to reduce required parking spaces from 1 per 200 square feet of floor area to 25 total parking spaces, and 10 of which will be provided initially as per development text.
15.
15.
Oh, yes, sorry, I forgot. Okay, 15, I'll amend that to 15.
And that's not a
Thank you.
motion, that's just,
Okay, well, just for the record, to be clear. All right, so any of these, A through F at the top that we think pertain to any of these? That is the last one.
Well, I think it's D. It assures that the compatibility of the land on either side is followed, and it was recommended in the comprehensive plan that this property would eventually move from residential to some other usage.
Yes, I agree. Well, and I think E2, right? It's orderly development of all lands with, because again, it complies with the comprehensive plan, which this has been slated to go commercial for quite some time.
I don't think any of these divergences have any impact to any of those A through F.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Moving on. All right. Motion. Guess approve, correct?
yeah, so.
With, where do you see the amended or,
It's usually in one of, like, the first sentence, motion to approve, I'm sorry, I don't have the copy.
oh, it's to concur with the zoning commission's recommendation of approval. Should I say, oh, yeah, it is, with modifications.
Yeah, sorry, I
It is,
don't have
it's
the
in
script in
there,
front of me.
it's in there.
Okay, good. Yeah, so we'll be looking for a motion regarding the rezoning request, and then a separate motion regarding the preliminary development plan.
Development plan. So we have to go through both of these for approval.
Correct. And then the divergences, the way we have them broken out in the script, we only have the one regarding the acreage under the motion to rezone because it's directly tied to the rezone, the acreage requirement. The rest of those divergences, the parking, the setbacks and stuff, you won't see until the motion for the development plan because they really have no bearing on just the rezoning of the property. They're related to the site, specific site plan proposed for this property.
All right,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
The divergence of 120303B, reduced setbacks of visual and mechanical barriers. I don't understand where that is on the plan.
Pull here
And whether this is the location or not, I don't think it's a great deal to enclose this entire thing with a brick wall. It's gonna look like the Alamo, huh?
Look like houses up there.
No, I mean, and literally, if this diagram's correct, this is 6-foot-high brick wall is enclosing almost the entire parcel.
I mean, right now they're demonstrating compliance, so, I mean, it's something we can discuss now, but again, we're gonna be coming back to finals, so maybe the type of wall or fence.
But why are we doing a wall when there are compatible uses on both sides?
I believe it's
Why the need
still,
for the barrier?
I thought that was just the back.
I
the-
thought
the
so
rear.
too, it's
Yeah,
just the back.
Shows it all the way up front.
No, it's
But
just
the
the rear.
verbiage in all of the descriptions says the brick wall is only going to be buffering from the residential in the back.
Yeah, rural residential is up north, which is the back, and which is what I remember we were committed to.
Okay, so even if you're doing a wooden fence, why the requirement for a barrier when these adjacent to now commercial and?
the code has landscaping requirements, but it gives you options of what you can do. They've chosen the fence. Our code isn't structured in a way that says if it's compatible district, you should only be doing this. That's one of the things we could probably look at in an amendment, but they've opted to do the option that'll the fence as opposed to a whole bunch of plantings.
Okay.
We're going to be kind of artistic with it as well, so it's not going to be too dull. I can guarantee you that. We're big nature lovers, so.
Graffiti is not your.
One off, we had to take one off from our basement this last visit, so.
And landscaping,
Quota of graffiti for the year.
the landscaping materials and planting types is usually something I look closer at
We can,
final.
yeah, good, thanks.
All right, so I'll move to concur with the zoning commission's recommendation of approval and thus approve with modifications the zoning map amendment, AKA rezoning request by Daniel Bino, which seeks to rezone approximately 1.206 acres located at 6463 Maxtown Road, Westerville, Ohio 43082, from rural residential to planned commercial district as further described, detailed, and illustrated in the materials of the subject application ZC case number 2022-07, also known as Multi-Sound Studios, and furthermore incorporating exhibits A through J. I further move to approve the following divergence from the Genoa Township Resolution. Number 1, Section 1203.01 to rezone a property of less than 5 acres to planned commercial district. In accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, this motion to approve the rezoning request, which is subject to referendum, will go into effect 30 days after today, June 3rd, 2023, and is based on the following findings of fact and conclusion. Number 1, said amendment is found to be consistent with the Genoa Township Comprehensive Plan pursuant to Section 108 of the Genoa Township Zoning Resolution. I don't read the or, right? It's one or the other.
Nope. I'll
And-
second.
Nobody wants to add
Oh, sorry.
another one? I'm fine if you don't.
I think we're good.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second, again.
Yeah. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Antonetts?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman? Yes. Ms. Vaughn?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
We're not finished. I wish we were, but we're not finished.
Although that was the important one.
Okay, sorry.
Next, I'll move to concur with the zoning commission's recommendation of approval. Do I say with accommodations again?
With modifications.
With
yes.
modifications, and thus approve, it's in there, sorry, I was ahead of myself. With modifications, the preliminary development plan incorporated with the subject zoning map amendment proposed by Daniel Bino contingent upon the successful adoption of said zoning map amendment. The proposed plan seeks to convert and expand an existing house on approximately 1.206 acres located at 6463 Maxtown Road, now zoned planned commercial district as further described, detailed, and illustrated in the materials of the subject application ZC case number 2022-07, also known as Multi-Sound Studios. This motion of approval is preliminary in nature, shall still require submission and approval of a final development plan application, and shall incorporate exhibits A through J, as well as any commitments made by the applicant during this hearing, including, is this where we put the 15?
You can note it here, but we'll also go through that divergence in a moment.
Should we just wait?
Sure.
But that won't be part of the divergence, right?
The 15 spaces.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So we can skip it here and just, okay. I further move to approve divergences as they relate to the preliminary development plan from the following sections of the Genoa Township zoning resolution. Number 1, Section 1203.01 to rezone a property of less than 5 acres to planned commercial district. Number 2, Section 1203.03A to reduce setbacks from adjacent residential properties as per development text. 3, Section 1203.03B to reduce setbacks of visual and mechanical barrier as per development text. 4, Section 1208.01 to reduce minimum building separation as per development text. 5, Section 1904.18 to reduce the amount of required parking from 1 space per 200 square feet of floor plan to 25 total parking spaces, 15 of which will be provided initially as per development text. Anything else?
Do we need to add, and by agreement of the applicant during this meeting, since it is not in the development text, the 15?
We can,
Clarification?
You certainly can do that. I'll also probably ask them to just send me a revised
Okay.
document for the record.
So do we need anything here?
No, not if they do that.
Okay, all right. This motion to approve the preliminary development plan, which is not subject to referendum, is based on the following findings of fact and conclusions. Well, I think it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. Anything else? Anyone want to add anything else?
No.
Good, okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so
We're
much.
finished with that. All right. So at this time, I'll move to close and recess the public hearing for the subject application known as Multi-Sound Studios, ZC case number 2022-07, and pursuant to section 2704.17 of the Genoa Township zoning resolution, to schedule a we don't need to do this, do we?
Nope.
We're just going to close.
We're just
Okay,
closing the hearing.
all right, so I'm going to finish that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Goodman? Yes. Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, that hearing is closed at 8:11, sorry, 8:11. Is there any other business before we close? Nobody has any last minute? All right, I'm going to switch to announcements. May 8th, there's a zoning commission meeting. May 10th, police advisory committee meeting. May 11th, communication advisory committee meeting. May 23rd, Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. May 29th, the offices are closed for Memorial Day. May 31st, there's a Parks Advisory Committee meeting, and our next regular trustee meeting is June 1st.
Trustee Vaughn?
Yes,
I'd like to make an announcement, too, that since the last meeting, we received a notification of a retirement in the office. So I'd like to inform the public, if anybody wants to say goodbye to Dawn Durbin, a longtime employee of the township. She'll be retiring May 31st with the township. So make sure you say goodbye to her. Thanks.
thank you, Paul. All right, this time, there's no more business before the board, so I'll move to adjourn the meeting at 8:12 PM. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Antoinette?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman? Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, motion carries. We're adjourned at